and a European Islam as to the culture, and there will be European Islamic cultures, because the British is not the same as the Dutch, and so on. But now we have to come to what is happening in Indonesia. And for example, in the book Radical Reform, the one which was just published in Dutch, my point was really crossing the board. What should be said about contemporary Islamic issues, not only in the West, but wherever we are. And this is why it's quite important here to try from within the society. And I can tell you, I went recently in Indonesia, I met so many scholars and so many students who are doing a great job from within, and women, by the way, women, and also people who are involved, in the two syndicates that are, the trade unions, the whole thing, which have millions of people. Some are conservative, some they don't want to be involved in this. But there is a critical thinking that is at work in the Indonesian society. So you were, for example, speaking about this, the difficulties from within for people challenging and questioning the Quran. Still you have now this discussion. So the point is to avoid the emotional, take of the whole discussion, to come to a critical discussion from within, and to challenge this. And I would say that this is something that we should do, and when it comes to students, as well, when they are involved. For example, the reality, I'm advocating a shift in the center of gravity of authority in Islam. So this is in this book. So based on the fundamentals of Usul al-Fiqh, Islamic law and jurisprudence. A shift in the center of gravity, saying that the scholars of the text cannot get it all. They need scholars, scientific, challenging, and economists challenging their knowledge by saying, you can provide with ethics and objectives. You cannot provide us with the knowledge in the specific areas. So this is what we have to advocate. And by saying this, I'm saying that this should happen, and it is happening in some countries. And I would say that you give a quite, you are talking about the tensions within the Indonesian society. I think you are right. But I would say here that there are things that are happening at the grassroots level with scholars and students that are quite interesting. Many trends are interesting. And also something that we have to say is the way there is this kind of polarization targeting the Christians in Indonesia to make it, more, we show that we are very Islamic by a defensive, a negative understanding of our commitment to Islam. This is why we have to be self-critical, and I would say it's exactly the same mindset that I would nurture in Indonesia, far from emotional politics, because this is exactly what some parties are doing.
I saw a question there.
Hi. I think your two arguments complete each other, but when they complete each other, they complete only half of the picture, because they kind of set aside the real politics, or the politics of flesh and blood, and this is a question about the they set aside or ignore or solely focus on the ideological or philosophical space of dialogue, and not talking about how we can get together and provide a space to fight, let's say, Hitlers and Moscovi's or such like politicians who take advantage based on philosophical political populism just to further open up this divide. So where would you find kind of getting together to find this practical space to work together? I mean, your emphasis on law is well respected. Bringing sensitivity to law is very important, but where or how would you do politics, real politics of flesh and blood, that's it?
Well, I think so far Tariq has been much more of the optimist than me, but I think there are optimistic signs actually in this country, in the sense that I think the great danger of the populists is not that they're going to take over Europe. I mean, Holland is not going to be ruled by Geert Wilders, and Le Pen is not going to take over France. The danger is that they push the mainstream parties further to the right, because the mainstream parties are afraid of losing voters to them. And I think that the next elections in the Netherlands will be very interesting, because the PvdA, the Labour Party, under Job Cohen, presumably, and the reason that Job Cohen is now the leader, means that the tendencies that were there, even in the PvdA, to be defensive vis-à-vis the populists and sort of say, well, yeah, we do have to stand up for our society against these Muslims and so on, will be lessened. And so there is common cause to be made, not only by the faith in God, but not between Muslims as a group or a community, because there's no such thing. They have many different interests and have different cultures and so on. But of course there are common interests, and here I would go along with you entirely, that I think the real divide is between what my co-author in Occidentalism, Avishai Margalit, called religious politics and economic politics. And the politics he means are not those based on a particular religion, but dogmatism, claims of absolute truth, and so on, versus those who are prepared to negotiate. And there, it's very easy to see how members of minorities, not necessarily just Muslims, but members of minorities might make common cause with many people who see that they have common interests.
Is this distinction between religious politics and politics as a kind of market negotiation also the reason for you that you underline so much the rule of law? That the rule of law is the institutional condition for avoiding religious politics?
Yes, but it's also the minimum to which we can all agree. Again, I'm not saying that's the only necessary ingredient to have a successful society, but I think it's the one ingredient you cannot. If you strip it down, it's the one thing that's unavoidable. But so in that sense, yes, that's true. But I don't think you can have a society, and no society is 100% given to economic politics, not even the United States, or 100% to the sort of theological attitude to politics. But I think the theological side is, the balance has gone too far that way, and is driven by very dogmatic thinking, not only by Geert Wilders, but by a lot of intellectuals who would never publicly support him, but have provided some of the intellectual, how should I put it, ammunition that he can use.
You would give the answer?
Yes, I completely agree with what you said. I think that this is very important. What we see now as trends and political trends. Now, if we are serious about this and we want really to come to a new way, even in politics, very often people think that you will have Muslims going one direction. This is out of the discussion. It's not happening. The Muslims are everywhere in all the parties, and this is going to be because now. What I'm saying, as citizens, first, I'm just against this attitude of being a minority. As citizens, I'm always repeating this. So from within, there is no minority citizenship. We are in the majority. Second thing, when we speak about values, when I speak, in all the audiences throughout Europe about the values that are mine, about justice, equality, dignity, I'm sharing the majority values of the Western society. So this is something that we should nurture, and then you find your way in the political, spectrum. You go and you go for this, and you don't confuse your religious affiliation with something which has to do with, for example, dealing with social policies and being able to advocate, a project for your society, and not to fall into the trap of nurturing this. Because this is what I was working in Rotterdam at the grassroots level. This was very much about very, sometimes dirty politics, which you feel, okay, look, I came, for example, as someone who was working on citizenship and diversity. I ended up being labeled as the Muslim, who is coming from, and then you are perceived in a way which is, in the global discussion, is problematic. So I would say that we have to go for this. And once again, look also at the work that we are trying to do from within. For example, I'm advocating this. My next book is about the quest for meaning, the philosophy of pluralism, is where we come together on values. And the next one is about our West, our Europe, our. So mine. Because I'm at home, and this is where we deal with these values and this involvement in politics in a way where we have common challenges, and this is what we have to nurture.
But Tariq, the reason that you were asked in Rotterdam to deal with these social issues is not because you're a Swiss. It's because you aren't.
No,
They wanted you to be the bridge to